I stared at the empty side of our bed, running my hand over the cold sheets where Wallace used to sleep. 20 years of marriage, gone in a 15-minute conversation over breakfast. "I'm leaving you, Stephanie," he had said between sips of coffee, as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "Yasmin and we're in love. My name is Stephanie Little. And at 45 years old, I found myself living a cliché I never thought would be mine, replaced by a younger woman, specifically my husband's 27-year-old secretary." "Mom." Emma's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She stood in the doorway of my bedroom, concern etched across her face. "You've been in here all day." "I'm fine, sweetheart." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. "No, you're not." Emma crossed the room and sat beside me. "And that's okay. Dad's an arse." I couldn't help but laugh, even as tears threatened to spill. "Language, young lady." "I'm 22, Mom, and I'm right." She grabbed my hand. "You know what's worse than sitting here feeling sorry for yourself? Having to attend that stupid office party tonight where he's officially introducing her to everyone." My stomach lurched. "I completely forgot about that." "Good, because we're not going. We have to." I stood up, wiping my eyes. "If I don't show up, people will think—" "Think what? That you're devastated your husband left you for someone barely older than your daughter? You're allowed to be hurt, Mom." I shook my head, moving to my closet. "No. If I don't go, they'll think I'm weak. Wallace will think he broke me." "Did he?" Emma challenged, following me. "Did he break you?" I pulled out the black dress I'd been saving for special occasions. "No," I said, but my voice wavered. "Then prove it. Not by going to his party and playing nice, but by remembering who you are." Emma grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. "You're Stephanie Little, the architect who graduated top of her class. The woman who helped build that firm from nothing. Where did that woman go?" "She disappeared somewhere between board meetings and dinner parties," I admitted. "I got so caught up in being Wallace's wife, I forgot how to be me. Well, I miss her, and I think it's time she came back." The party was exactly as awful as I'd imagined. Wallace had rented out the entire rooftop of the city's most exclusive hotel, and everywhere I looked, people were whispering behind their hands. "Stephanie!" Wallace's voice boomed across the space. He was walking toward me, Yasmin on his arm, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car. "I'm so glad you could make it. Wallace." I managed a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Yasmin." "Mrs. Little?" Yasmin said, then caught herself. "Oh, I'm sorry. Is it still Mrs. Little, or—" I saw red, but before I could respond, Emma stepped forward. "It's still Mrs. Little, though I hear you're quite familiar with the position." "Emma," Wallace warned, but she wasn't finished. "What? I'm just making conversation. Isn't that what these parties are for? Getting to know each other better?" Emma's smile was razor-sharp. "Like how you got to know Dad better during all those late nights at the office." "That's enough," Wallace snapped. "Stephanie, control your daughter." "Control my—" I started, but Lucia, my old friend from architecture school, appeared at my side. "Stephanie, darling," she air-kissed my cheeks. "I've been looking everywhere for you. We need your opinion on the Henderson project. You know, the one you originally designed?" As Lucia led us away, I caught a glimpse of Wallace's face, the first crack in his perfect facade. He knew as well as I did that I'd designed most of the firm's award-winning projects in the early days, before I stepped back to support his career. "You okay?" Lucia whispered once we were out of earshot. "No," I admitted, watching Wallace and Yasmin work the room. "But I will be." Emma squeezed my hand. "Remember what I said about that woman you used to be?" I nodded, straightening my spine. "Maybe it's time she made a comeback." "That's my girl," Emma said, and for the first time since Wallace left, I felt something other than despair. It was small, barely a spark, but it was there. Anger, determination, hope. The pencil felt foreign in my hand as I sat at my old drafting table, dust dancing in the morning light streaming through my home office windows. 20 years of architectural sketches and designs lay scattered around me, yellowed at the edges but still holding the dreams I'd put aside. "Mum, You need to upgrade from these dinosaur tools, Emma said, placing a sleek tablet next to my sketches. Welcome to the 21st century. I picked up the tablet hesitantly. I wouldn't even know where to start with this thing. That's why you have me. She pulled up a chair. And why we're going to spend the weekend getting you back up to speed. The firm that interviewed you yesterday needs your portfolio in digital format. About that interview, I set the tablet down. I don't think it went well. They kept asking about recent projects. And I haven't designed anything in 15 years, Emma. Maybe this is a mistake. Emma grabbed a sketch from the pile, my design for the city's contemporary art museum. This isn't a mistake. This is brilliant. And you know who agrees? Lucia. I called her this morning. You what? The doorbell rang before Emma could respond. She grinned. Perfect timing. Lucia burst into my office like a whirlwind, carrying a laptop and what looked like project files. Stephanie, darling, we need to talk about getting you back in the game. Lucia, No excuses. She set everything down on my desk. I have 3 clients who need residential projects designed, and I'm swamped. I need someone I trust to take them on as freelance work. Freelance? The word felt like possibility. Yes, freelance, as in you work from home, set your own hours, and remind yourself why you fell in love with architecture in the first place. Lucia opened her laptop. Emma tells me you're learning digital tools. Trying to, I admitted. Perfect. I'll send you the project briefs, and you can work on them while you're getting up to speed. She paused, studying me. Unless you're not interested. I looked at the tablet Emma had brought, then at my old sketches. I'm interested. I'm just scared, Lucia's voice softened. Good. Use it. Channel it into your work. Remember how terrified we were in school before every project review? And what happened? We got the highest marks in the class. I smiled at the memory. Exactly. Now let's see what you can do with this. She pulled up a file on her laptop. Client wants a modern beach house. 3 bedrooms, open concept, lots of natural light. For the next few hours, Emma and Lucia taught me the basics of digital design software. My hand grew steadier with each stroke, muscle memory from years of drafting helping me adapt. By sunset, I had my first digital concept sketch completed. This is gorgeous, Mum, Emma said, studying the rendering. You haven't lost your touch at all. She never did, Lucia agreed. The industry lost a star when you stepped back, Steph. But maybe it's time for a comeback tour. I was about to respond when the mail slot clicked and envelopes scattered across the floor. Emma gathered them up, pausing at a thick manila envelope with no return address. What's this? She handed it to me. I opened it carefully, pulling out a stack of documents. As I read the first page, my hands began to shake. Mum. Emma moved closer. What is it? Financial records from the firm, I whispered. Someone's been cooking the books. Lucia leaned forward. What do you mean? These transactions, they don't add up. There are discrepancies in project budgets, missing funds from client payments. I flipped through more pages. And Wallace's signature is on everything. That son of a... Emma started. Wait. I held up a hand, reading further. Some of these date back to before he met Yasmin. This isn't just about the affair. This is bigger. What are you going to do? Lucia asked. I looked at my digital sketch on the screen, then at the damning documents in my hands. For years, I'd trusted Wallace to handle the business side while I focused on design. Now I wondered if that trust had been my biggest mistake. First, I said, straightening my spine, I'm going to finish these freelance projects and get my confidence back. Then, I tapped the documents. Then, I'm going to find out exactly what my husband has been up to. And then, Emma prompted, I thought about the party, about Yasmin's smirk and Wallace's dismissive tone, about 20 years of putting my dreams on hold. And then, I said, my voice steady, I'm going to take back what's mine. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Ronald arrived, his silver hair dishevelled from the morning wind. I'd chosen this location carefully, 3 blocks from the firm, but far enough that we wouldn't run into Wallace or his new protégé. "These are serious allegations, Stephanie," Ronald said, spreading the documents across the table. 20 years on the board had left him with a poker face, but I caught the slight tremor in his hands. "I know." I pushed my untouched coffee aside. That's why I needed someone I could trust to look at them. He adjusted his reading glasses, scrutinizing each page. "The Henderson Project. The numbers don't match our reported earnings. And the Riverside development." He trailed off, shaking his head. "What about it?" "The construction costs are inflated by almost 40%. Ronald lowered his voice. "This could ruin him." "It could ruin the whole firm," I corrected. "My firm, the one I helped build while he was what?" A familiar voice cut through the air. I turned to see Yasmin standing by our table, designer handbag clutched tight against her side. Ronald quickly gathered the papers. "This is a private meeting." "Private?" Yasmin's laugh was sharp. "In a public coffee shop? Wallace will be interested to hear about this little rendezvous." I stood up, matching her height in my heels. "Go ahead, tell him. Tell him his wife is having coffee with a board member. I'm sure that will keep him up at night." "Ex-wife," she corrected with a smirk. "Not yet," I smiled, sweet as poison. "And as a current shareholder, I have every right to discuss company business with fellow board members. Or did Wallace not mention that part when he was promising you the world?" Her confidence wavered for a moment. "Whatever you're planning. Have a lovely day, Yasmin." I turned back to Ronald, effectively dismissing her. After a few seconds, her heels clicked away across the floor. "That was risky," Ronald said once she was gone. "She'll tell Wallace." "I'm counting on it." I pulled out my phone, showing him the email I'd received that morning. "Wallace is pitching the Marina Tower project to the board next week. It's the biggest contract we've had in years." "And you think he's planning to—" "I don't think, I know." I pointed to one of the documents. "Look at the preliminary budget he's drawn up. The same pattern, just larger numbers." Ronald removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "What do you need from me?" "Information. Access. Time to build my case before he can cover his tracks." "It won't be easy. He's got most of the board in his pocket." "Most isn't all." I reached into my bag and pulled out a USB drive. "I've been working on an alternative proposal for Marina Tower, something that could save the client money while actually delivering what they want." Ronald's eyebrows shot up as he reviewed my designs. "This is exceptional. When did you have time to—" "I haven't been sleeping much lately." I managed a small smile. "Amazing what you can accomplish when your husband leaves you for his secretary." "Stephanie," Ronald leaned forward. "If we do this, if we expose him, there's no going back. The publicity alone could tank the company's reputation. Unless we have a plan to save it." I pulled out one more document, my strategy for restructuring the firm. "We need to get ahead of this. Present it as cleaning house, not airing dirty laundry." He studied the plan, nodding slowly. "You've thought this through." "I've had nothing but time to think." My phone buzzed. A text from Emma warning me that Wallace was asking questions about my meeting with Ronald. "We need to move fast. Are you with me?" Ronald was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook. 2 months ago, I noticed some irregularities in the Asian market expansion budget. I've been keeping track." He slid the notebook across the table. "I think you'll find this interesting." My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Pages of detailed notes, dates, amounts, all documenting Wallace's financial misconduct. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Ronald stood, straightening his tie. "The board meets on Tuesday to review the Marina Tower proposals. That gives us 5 days to prepare. I'll be ready." "You'd better be, because Wallace won't go down without a fight." I watched Ronald leave, then pulled out my tablet to refine my designs. Wallace had taught me one valuable lesson over the years. In business, like architecture, every detail matters. And I was about to show him just how well I'd learned that lesson. My phone buzzed again. Wallace this time. I let it ring. Let him worry. Let him wonder. In 5 days, he'd have all the answers he could handle. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Wallace froze mid-sentence, his presentation clicker suspended in mid-air. 20 pairs of eyes followed me as I took my seat at the far end of the table. Stephanie, he recovered quickly, smoothing his tie. This is a closed board meeting. I'm well aware. I placed my laptop on the table. As a major shareholder, I have every right to be here. Yasmin, seated in the corner taking minutes, shifted uncomfortably. Wallace's jaw tightened, but he pressed on with his presentation about Marina Tower. As you can see, our projected costs. He clicked through slides of inflated numbers I'd memorized from the leaked documents. Excuse me, I interrupted, raising my hand. Could you go back to the construction materials breakdown? We can discuss details after. Now, please. My voice carried an authority I hadn't used in years. The board should be aware that your estimates are nearly double the current market rates. Murmurs rippled through the room. Wallace's face reddened. I assure you, these numbers are accurate. Are they? I opened my laptop. Because I took the liberty of contacting 3 major suppliers. Their quotes tell a very different story. I turned my screen toward the board members. I've prepared an alternative proposal, one that could save our clients millions while maintaining profit margins. This is highly irregular, Wallace sputtered. Ronald cleared his throat. I move to hear Mrs. Little's proposal. Seconded, another board member called out. I connected my laptop to the projector and my designs filled the screen. The modern lines of Marina Tower drew gasps from the room. I'd spent countless sleepless nights perfecting every detail, channeling 2 decades of pent-up creativity into something extraordinary. My design reduces material waste by 30% through innovative structural solutions, I explained, clicking through the presentation. We can deliver a more sustainable, cost-effective building without sacrificing aesthetic appeal. These are just pretty pictures, Wallace cut in. Where are your technical specifications? I smiled, pulling up detailed engineering reports. Right here, along with environmental impact studies, cost breakdowns, and timeline projections. Everything's been verified by independent consultants. When did you have time to... Wallace stopped himself, but not before I caught his slip. When did I have time? Since you're asking, I had plenty of time after you moved out. Amazing how productive one can be without having to maintain the facade of a perfect corporate wife. Yasmin dropped her pen, scrambling to retrieve it from under the table. Wallace's face had gone from red to purple. This is personal, he accused. You're trying to undermine me because... Because what? I challenged. Because you left me, or because I finally stopped letting you take credit for my work. The board members exchanged glances. I pressed on, pulling up my final slides. This isn't about personal grievances. It's about the future of this firm, our reputation, our integrity. I paused, meeting each board member's eyes. And our responsibility to our clients. I moved to vote on the proposals, Ronald announced. Wallace stepped forward. Now wait a minute. Seconded, came another voice, then another. The vote was quick and decisive. My proposal won by a landslide. As board members filed out congratulating me, Wallace lingered behind. I could see the wheels turning in his head, calculating his next move. You've made a serious mistake, he said quietly. No, Wallace. My mistake was letting you convince me to give up my career for yours. I gathered my things. But I'm fixing that now. Is that what this is about? Getting even? This is about doing what's right for the firm. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Wallace, you might want to review those financial records you've been keeping in the offshore account. The one you opened with Yasmin last month? His face went pale. Behind him, Yasmin's eyes widened in panic. How did you... I learned from the best, I said. You always told me to pay attention to details. I left them standing there, walking past the glass-walled offices where I'd once felt so out of place. Emma was waiting in the lobby, practically bouncing with excitement. Well, she demanded. They loved it. She hugged me tight. I knew they would. Dad looked like he was going to explode. That's not all he's going to do when he realizes what's coming next. I checked my phone. Ronald had already sent the meeting minutes, officially recording my victory. Are you scared? Emma asked as we stepped into the elevator. I thought about the documents safely stored with my lawyer, the board's reaction to my presentation, and the look of fear in Wallace's eyes when I mentioned the offshore account. No, I said, watching the floor numbers descend. For the first time in years, I'm not scared at all. You wanted to see me. Wallace stood in the doorway of my old office, which I'd reclaimed after the board meeting. His usual confidence had cracked, revealing something closer to desperation. Sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. We need to talk about the audit. He remained standing. What audit? The one the board approved this morning. I slid a document across the desk. Ronald made the motion. Unanimous vote. Wallace snatched up the paper, his hands shaking slightly as he read. This is a witch hunt. No, this is due diligence. I pulled up the offshore account records on my screen. Would you like to explain these transfers? Or should I ask Yasmin? How did you get access to? You used my birthday as the security question backup. I couldn't help but laugh. 20 years of marriage and you still haven't learned to be original with your passwords. He collapsed into the chair. What do you want? The truth. All of it. Starting with when you began embezzling from the firm. I never. Don't. I turned my screen to face him. Emma's quite good with computers, you know. She traced everything. The fake vendor accounts, the inflated invoices, the kickbacks. Did Yasmin help you set those up, or was she just a convenient distraction? His face hardened. Leave her out of this. Why? Because she's innocent. I pulled up another document. Her signature is on half these transfers. She's as guilty as you are. You'll destroy the company if this gets out. No, Wallace, you destroyed it the moment you decided to steal from it. I leaned forward. But I'm willing to help you save face. Resign quietly, pay back what you took, and we can handle this internally. He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. You think you can threaten me? I built this company. We built this company, I corrected, and I won't let you run it into the ground. The board will never believe you over me. They already do. I pressed a button on my phone. Come in, please. The door opened, and Ronald entered, followed by 2 other board members. Wallace's face went ashen. How long have you been listening? Long enough, Ronald said. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. I suggest you prepare a statement. Wallace turned to me, his mask finally cracking completely. You planned this. No, Wallace. You planned this the day you decided to betray everything we built together. I stood up. I'm just finishing what you started. He lunged forward, hands slamming onto my desk. You vindictive bit. Security is on their way up, Ronald cut in smoothly. Don't make this worse for yourself. The door burst open again, this time revealing Yasmin. Wallace, we have a problem. Oh. She froze at the sight of the board members. Perfect timing, I said. We were just discussing the offshore accounts you helped set up. Yasmin's perfectly made-up face crumpled. I only did what he told me to do. Wallace spun toward her. Shut up! No, please continue, Ronald encouraged. The board would love to hear more about your role in all this. What followed was 30 minutes of Yasmin detailing every scheme, every fraudulent transaction, every cover-up. Wallace stood silent, watching his carefully constructed world collapse. That's enough for now, Ronald finally said. Security will escort you both out. Don't leave town. Our lawyers will be in touch. As they were led away, I caught Wallace's final glare. The hatred in his eyes would have crushed me a month ago. Now it felt like validation. Are you okay? Ronald asked after the others had left. Better than okay. I straightened the papers on my desk. Has the press gotten wind of this yet? No, but they will. We need to get ahead of it. Already done. I handed him a press release. A statement about internal restructuring, commitment to transparency, and a smooth leadership transition. No mention of fraud or criminal charges yet. He read it, nodding appreciatively. You've thought of everything. I had to. It was the only way to make sure he couldn't talk his way out of it this time. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Dad and Yasmin just left the building. You okay? I typed back quickly. Never better. Dinner tonight. Wouldn't miss it. Love you, Mom. Ronald cleared his throat. The board will want to discuss succession plans tomorrow. I know. I looked around the office, my office, and smiled. Tell them I'm ready. For what's coming. The media circus, the legal battles, for everything. I picked up a framed photo from my desk. Me at graduation, clutching my architecture degree, eyes full of dreams. I've spent 20 years playing supporting roles in other people's stories. It's time to write my own. The boardroom buzzed with nervous energy as I took my place at the head of the table. 24 hours had passed since Wallace's dramatic exit, and now everyone waited for the other shoe to drop. The vote is unanimous, Ronald announced, setting down the final ballot. Stephanie Little is hereby appointed CEO of the firm, effective immediately. Applause broke out, but was quickly interrupted by my assistant rushing in. The police are here, she whispered urgently. Right on cue, 2 detectives entered the room, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. Mrs. Little, we need to speak with you about Wallace and Yasmin. Of course. I gestured to my office. Ronald, would you mind wrapping up here? Inside my office, the senior detective got straight to the point. They're attempting to flee the country. We've frozen the accounts you provided information about, but they're claiming corporate persecution. I expected as much. I handed over a thick file. Here's everything you need. Bank statements, forged documents, witness statements. My lawyers have copies of everything. The younger detective whistled as he flipped through the pages. This is thorough. I learned to document everything after years of watching Wallace operate. I pulled up the security footage on my computer, including this conversation from yesterday where they both admitted to their roles in the fraud. You recorded that? The board required all executive offices to have security cameras installed last year. Wallace's idea, ironically. I couldn't help but smile. He never thought it would be used against him. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the glass walls, I could see Yasmin being led in by uniformed officers, mascara streaking down her face. You ruined everything, she screamed when she saw me. We were going to be happy. Happy? I stepped into the hallway. With stolen money and lies? He loved me. Not you. Me. No, Yasmin. He loved what you represented. Youth, admiration, someone who wouldn't question his schemes. I kept my voice steady, just like he loved what I represented 20 years ago. That's not true, but her voice cracked. Did he promise to marry you, to give you everything you wanted? I watched recognition flash across her face. Let me guess. Right after one more big project, one more deal. She crumpled into a chair, shoulders shaking. He said the Marina Tower project would set us up for life. Mrs. Little? The senior detective touched my arm. We need to take her in for processing. I nodded, then turned back to Yasmin. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you got caught up in his games. Why? She looked up, makeup smeared. Why would you be sorry for me after what I did? Because I remember being young and believing in someone who didn't deserve it. I handed her a tissue. The difference is, I got 20 years older before I learned my lesson. You're getting a chance to start over now. The officers led her away just as Emma arrived, practically running down the hallway. Mom, I just saw Dad being arrested outside the airport. I know. I hugged her tight. The detectives just told me. Are you okay? She pulled back to study my face. I'm better than okay. I gestured to the boardroom where people were still milling about. Want to hear some good news? Her eyes widened. They made you CEO. Unanimous vote, she squealed, hugging me again. I'm so proud of you. Mrs. Little, my assistant appeared. The press is gathering in the lobby. They want a statement about the arrests and your appointment. I straightened my jacket. Time to face the music. Want me to come with you? Emma asked. Always. The lobby was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as we descended the stairs. I took my place at the podium, Emma standing proudly beside me. Good morning. As you may have heard, significant changes are taking place at our firm. I began the carefully prepared statement, but then set it aside. Actually, let me speak from the heart. 20 years ago, I helped build this company on principles of integrity and innovation. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of those values. Today marks a new beginning. Questions erupted from the crowd. What about the allegations against Wallace? Did you know about the fraud? Is it true your husband left you for his secretary? I held up my hand. This isn't about personal drama. It's about doing what's right, about remembering who we are and what we stand for. Under my leadership, this firm will return to its founding principles. We will create architecture that serves our clients and our community with honesty and vision. Emma squeezed my hand as more questions flew. I answered each one with the same direct clarity that had won me the board's trust. No hiding, no sugarcoating, just truth. Because that's what Wallace never understood. Real power isn't in secrets and schemes. It's in standing in your truth no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Look who made the cover of Business Weekly, Emma announced, dropping the magazine on my desk. My own face stared back at me beneath the headline, "From Betrayed Wife to CEO, the Architect of Justice." They really went with that title? I groaned, but couldn't help smiling. The interview requests are piling up, my assistant called from her desk. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, even Good Morning America. Tell them I'm busy running a company. I turned back to the Marina Tower blueprints spread across my desk when my office door burst open. "You vindictive witch!" Yasmin stormed in, clutching court papers. Her designer clothes had been replaced by something off the rack, her perfectly styled hair now limp and frizzy. Security rushed in behind her, but I waved them off. "It's okay. Give us a minute." Emma started to protest, but I shook my head. "I've got this, sweetheart." Once we were alone, Yasmin slammed the papers down. 10 years! They're asking for 10 years! The prosecution makes their own decisions. I kept my voice calm. I simply provided evidence. Evidence you'd been collecting for months. You planned this whole thing. No, Yasmin. You and Wallace planned this. Every fraudulent transaction, every lie, every betrayal, those were your choices. She collapsed into a chair, her anger crumbling into tears. He said he had a plan, that we'd be in Europe by now, living our dream life. And instead, he's claiming you acted alone. I slid a tissue box across the desk. I saw his statement to the prosecutors. Her head snapped up. What? He's throwing you under the bus, Yasmin, just like he threw me aside when something better came along. I pulled out a file. But you have a choice now. What choice? Prison or prison? Cooperation. I opened the file. Help the prosecution build their case against Wallace, show genuine remorse, make restitution. Your sentence could be reduced significantly. She stared at me suspiciously. Why would you help me? Because unlike Wallace, I believe in second chances. I handed her a business card. This is my lawyer's number. She's expecting your call. Yasmin took the card with trembling fingers. I don't understand you. I helped destroy your marriage. No, Wallace destroyed our marriage long before you came along. I just didn't want to see it. I stood up, walking to the window overlooking the city. Besides, I should thank you. Thank me? If you hadn't come along, I might have wasted another 20 years being Wallace's shadow. I turned back to her. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. A knock at the door interrupted us. Ronald with more Marina Tower updates. Yasmin quickly wiped her eyes and stood. I'll call the lawyer, she said quietly, heading for the door. She paused with her hand on the knob. Stephanie, I'm sorry. For everything. After she left, Ronald raised an eyebrow. That was unexpected. Life usually is. I gestured to his files. What have you got for me? The clients love your revised designs. Construction starts next month. He hesitated. There's something else. Wallace is asking to see you. My stomach tightened. Where? County jail. His lawyer says he wants to make a deal. No deals. I picked up the Business Weekly magazine, studying my own determined expression. He faces the consequences of his actions, just like everyone else. Speaking of consequences, Emma poked her head in, the women's shelter called. They'd love you to speak at their fundraiser next month. I smiled, remembering the shelter that had offered me counselling during those first dark days after Wallace left. Tell them I'd be honoured. Already did, she grinned. Oh, and Mom, Dad's girlfriend from the Paris office called. Apparently he promised her the same things he promised Yasmin. Of course he did, I shook my head. Forward her contact information to the prosecutors. As Emma left, Ronald chuckled. You know, for someone who just went through hell, you seem remarkably at peace. I am. I picked up my tablet, pulling up the latest project designs. For the first time in decades, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And where's that? I gestured around the office. My office, at the blueprints and designs, the magazine cover, the view of the city I was helping to shape. Right here, running my company, creating something meaningful. I smiled. Being myself. Well then, Ronald headed for the door. I'd say karma did its job perfectly. No, I corrected him, turning back to my work. We did our job. Karma just helped point us in the right direction. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. Emma squeezed my hand as we passed through security, heading to courtroom 3 where Wallace's sentencing was about to begin. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, I do. I straightened my spine. I need to see it through. Need? The courtroom fell silent as we entered. Wallace sat at the defendant's table, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange, his confident posture now slumped. When he saw me, he mouthed, "Please." I took my seat, ignoring his plea. Yasmin was already there, seated with the prosecution. She'd kept her end of the deal, testifying against Wallace in exchange for a reduced sentence. All rise, the bailiff called as the judge entered. What followed was a detailed recounting of Wallace's crimes, the fraud, the embezzlement, the multiple affairs, and broken promises. I listened as victim after victim testified about lost savings and shattered trust. Finally, Wallace stood for his statement. Your Honour, his voice cracked, I've made mistakes. Terrible mistakes, but I'm not the only one responsible. The pressure to succeed, to maintain appearances. He turned toward me. Stephanie knows. She understands what it's like at the top. We built this together. Please tell them. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Little, would you like to make a statement? I stood, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. Yes, Your Honour. Walking to the podium, I pulled out the notes I'd prepared, then set them aside. I've known Wallace for 25 years. We built a company together, shared a life together, and somewhere along the way, he forgot something crucial. I met his desperate gaze. Success isn't measured by what you take, but by what you create, what you give back. Wallace's face fell as I continued. The firm is thriving now. We've repaid every client he defrauded. We're building sustainable, beautiful buildings that serve our community, and we're doing it honestly. I turned to the judge. I don't hate Wallace anymore. I pity him. Because while he's been scheming and stealing, he missed out on the real rewards of our work, the joy of creation, the satisfaction of earning trust, the pride of building something meaningful. The judge nodded thoughtfully before delivering his sentence. 15 years, no possibility of early parole. As Wallace was led away, he called out, "Stephanie, wait, I still love you." I gathered my things, turning to Emma instead. Ready for lunch? Outside, reporters swarmed us with questions about the sentence. Mrs. Little, how do you feel about the verdict? Will you be filing civil charges? What's next for you and the firm? I held up my hand. Today isn't about the past. It's about the future. I pulled out the renderings for our latest project, a women's shelter and career training centre. This is what matters now, creating spaces that change lives, building a legacy of integrity. Back at the office, Ronald was waiting with the board members. Quite a morning, he said, handing me a coffee. Quite a year. I sat down at the conference table. Now, let's talk about something more important. The shelter project needs fast-tracking. Already done, Emma announced, pulling up the permits on the screen. Construction starts next week. Perfect. I looked around at my team, faces that had supported me through everything, people who shared my vision for what the firm could be. Any other business? Just one thing. Ronald smiled. The American Institute of Architects called. They want you to give the keynote at their annual conference. Theme? I asked, already knowing I'd accept. Building tomorrow, architecture with purpose. He paused. They specifically mentioned wanting to hear about your journey from architect to CEO. Tell them yes. I stood, walking to the window. The Marina Tower was rising in the distance, its innovative design already changing the city's skyline. But make it clear, I was always both. I just needed reminding. Emma appeared at my side. Proud of you, Mom. Proud of us, I corrected, hugging her close. Now, who's ready to build something extraordinary? The room filled with enthusiastic responses, and I smiled, remembering that morning Wallace left, how I thought my world was ending. Instead, it was just beginning. I turned back to my team, pulled up our project plans, and did what I do best, created something beautiful from the ruins of what was broken. Because that's what architects do. We don't just build buildings, we build futures. And mine was finally exactly as I'd designed it to be.